And we welcome you to this session and to the first presenters in session on link 3B. And our first presenters are Kate Roussel and Susan Orchard, and they're going to be speaking about intercultural rhetoric. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and welcome to our presentation. Thank you for joining. This is a critique of intercultural rhetoric, and I will state my name again. My name is Kate Roussel, and this is Susan Orchard.
Hi. So here's our agenda. Thank you so much, Kate. So we will discuss and define intercultural rhetoric, display different schools of thought, and we will introduce Ulla Connor as a leading researcher in the field. We will illustrate pedagogical implications and how different types of cultures interact in intercultural settings. Next, we present strengths and limitations of this approach and our relevant experiences and future applications. Lastly, we will finish with conclusions and any questions you may have. Okay, so let's begin here with an introduction to this approach. Intercultural rhetoric, also known as contrastive rhetoric, cross-cultural rhetoric, discourse linguistics, discourse analysis, is defined by Connor as the study of written discourse between and among individuals with different cultural backgrounds. Connor, 2011. Intercultural rhetoric examines the influences of first language, culture, and education on the production of texts, with the aim of advancing cross-cultural communication research. It helps to inform writers, editors, translators, and language and composition teachers, as well as learners among other users and producers of text. Sorry, excuse me, my throat is dry for some reason. Okay, so now we're going to move on to schools of thought. So in this infographic, it shows you how intercultural rhetoric has evolved. In Kaplan's 1966 seminal paper, Cultural Thought Patterns in Intercultural Rhetoric, written rhetorical patterns of different cultures are examined using simple paragraph analysis. Since the 1970s, researchers investigated beyond the level of syntax, discourse of text, as seen in pioneering discourse analyses of Enquist 1974 and Van Beek 1985, and the research of de Beaugrand and Bressler 1981, which introduced tools to elaborate and specify the discourse features of texts. Systemic linguistics was developed by Halliday in 1985 and influenced by the Prague School. His theory of language and discourse had a big influence on text analyses in applied linguistics and contrastive rhetoric. Connor's 1996 book defined contrastive rhetoric, establishing it as an area of research in SLA that identifies problems in composition encountered by second language writers and by referring to the rhetorical strategies of the first language and attempts to explain them. Connor's 2000 genre study included both textual genre analysis and context-sensitive interview method investigating the differences and similarities between grand proposals written by humanists and scientists. Disciplinary cultures were studied, not ethnic cultures. Hyland 2003 strengthens the case for the use of discourse analysis in L2 composition research. This paper highlights the increasing interest in L2. To sum up here, text analyses, genre analyses, and corpus analyses are all essential for intercultural rhetoric research, while concentrating on the notion that small cultures interact with big national cultures as data is collected, analyzed, and interpreted. Connor 2004. Okay, so now let's take a look at Ulla Connor. She's one of the foremost proponents and researchers of intercultural rhetoric. She currently works at Indiana University as a Chancellor's Professor of English and is the Director of the International Center for Intercultural Communication at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indiana. Connor has authored and co-authored several books and more than 100 articles and book chapters. In her research, she combines theories and methods from both linguistics and rhetoric. Her work has contributed to the advancement of intercultural rhetoric in many ways, in that it has forged links between contrastive rhetoric and European text linguistics. Her work has also strengthened contrastive rhetoric's connections with the field of rhetoric and composition, and has brought corpus analysis into the field and connected contrastive rhetoric with ESP. It has promoted the development of contrastive rhetoric research methods and has also moved contrastive rhetoric beyond text to consider context. Connor's identity as an L2 speaker has encouraged broad international participation in the field. Contrastive rhetoric has been criticized for its ethnocentricity. However, these criticisms have less impact when international scholars such as Connor lead the charge. Now I hand it over to Kate.
Thank you so much, Sue. In this slide, we'll discuss pedagogical applications. As a result of introducing the intercultural rhetoric approach in their classroom, English for specific purposes teachers and advanced learners can compare their own organizational habits and lexical grammatical choices to a corpus of the articles written by practitioners in the discipline. They also can benefit from a corpora of discipline-specific texts in different languages to identify potential problems their students may face while they transition to their new writing system. Intercultural rhetoric research can also help business professionals in a variety of situations in which different languages are used and different cultures interact. While examining translingual practices in postgraduate writers of English, NENL 2019 have reported that intercultural awareness played a significant role of how writers perceive the L2 writing conventions. The knowledge of the target audience expectations have improved the quality of the student writing. It is noteworthy that the weakest student reported almost no intercultural awareness at the beginning of the study. However, as her knowledge grew and she understood the demands of her target audience, the quality of her writing has improved drastically. Furthermore, intercultural rhetoric helps us understand that produced language is culture specific and may result in transfer of first language patterns into second language patterns, which means teachers should be aware of their students' cultural backgrounds and linguistic repertoire. Genre-specific analysis sheds light on situation-specific discourse in the classroom, allowing the students to instruct the situational differences. So we believe that instructors need to consult Connor's multi-layered model and position the text within a cultural situationally appropriate context. They need to include the discussion of intercultural comparison of their students' writing traditions and not limiting their classroom to the ethnic understanding of culture, but including the idea of small culture into their curriculum and lesson plans. The idea of small culture may be related to discipline-specific writing, such as nursing, business, liberal arts, and etc. Let's take a look at this model displaying the overlaps between different types of cultures. This model was adapted from Holiday in 1994 and 1999 and was cited in Connor and Traversa 2014. It contains various overlapping institutions and practices. Small and large cultures are present, and national culture, as in big culture, interacts with smaller cultures, such as classroom culture and student culture. We believe it is important for the instructors to understand the connections between small cultures and large cultures in order to build a cohesive classroom and focus on individual students. Culture is difficult to define, and it is changing over time. Atkinson 2004 states that contrastive rhetoric needs to change its view on culture from received view, which considers culture to be ethnic, national, and static, to alternative view, which takes into account a more fluid understanding of culture in our globalized world. We believe that language instructors need to turn a critical eye to their own understanding of culture in order to create effective materials and lesson plans. So in this slide, we will discuss more pedagogical applications. Connor and Traversa 2014 state that the awareness of audience expectations leads to eliminative negative L1 to L2 transfer, and Casanova 2004, as cited in Connor and Traversa 2014, presents a three-pronged approach to bring intercultural awareness into the classroom, which consists of developing awareness of audience expectations, eliminating negative L1 to L2 approach, and discussing differences in critical thinking expression. So recent research has indicated that East Asian students in China and Japan have reported their writing when they were made, have improved their writing when they were made aware of audience expectations, which helped them to eliminate negative transfer from L1 to L2, as started in Young Wang and Spencer 2008, cited in Connor and Traversa 2014. Also, Walker 2011 suggests that letting students to be ethnographers in their classroom and assigning target questions related to the articles they consult in order to write their essays. We believe that if students conduct their own research regarding the differences between the writing system and different views on the resources, they used to write their essays, it would greatly contribute to their intercultural understanding of the world as well as improve their quality of writing. Our pedagogical experiences show that different cultures come from different ways to express critical thinking skills. We believe that by encouraging our students to conduct intercultural research as a part of classroom instruction practice, they can negotiate different ways of critical thinking expressed in the classroom. Elwood and Nakani 2009 described tensions between students and teachers' perceptions of critical thinking in an ASL classroom in Australia. Japanese students may be viewed as silent due to their ethnic and cultural background. However, the authors demonstrate a high degree of complexity related to student behavior in the classroom. Presence of absence of speech is related to personality qualities as well as the attitudes towards the teacher position in classroom context. It would be beneficial to include an intercultural negotiation to the classroom context in order to challenge cultural stereotypes related to critical thinking. Over to you, Sue, for strengths.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, so intercultural rhetoric approaches present many advantages. For example, graduate students, postdoctoral researchers, and other novice academic writers can compare their own rhetorical and organization habits, as well as lexical grammatical choices. Teachers of writing for specific disciplines can benefit from the comparison of corpora of discipline-specific texts in different languages to identify certain pitfalls that students might fall into when attempting to write in L2. Corpora comparison can help teachers understand mismatches in formulations of texts. For example, research article introductions are often a source of confusion. When learners rely on the conventions of their own native language, it can lead to a mismatch when writing in L2. By promoting awareness of the differences in writing conventions, it will help learners to develop their skills. At the same time, instructors should remind them that one system is not superior, just different. Finally, in the area of research, intercultural rhetoric helps to shed light on successful and unsuccessful strategies used during business negotiation where multiple languages and cultures interact. Now back over to Kate.
Thank you so much, Sue. We'll talk about more limitations. We believe that language instructors may oversimplify the concept of culture due to lack of sufficient knowledge. Also, the idea of small culture and individual cultural differences may be ignored. Oversimplifying the idea of culture may lead to stereotyping and not utilizing student linguistic and cultural repertoire. Belcher 2014 states that in his seminal work, Kaplan 1996 stated that the student differences in writing are attributed to their cognitive styles rather than cognitive abilities, which leads to colonialist perception of culture as it provides a static approach between self and other, again leading to a limited understanding of culture as a concept. And that's Kaplan 1996 as cited in Belcher 2014. By comparing the differences rather than similarities between cultures, we can potentially create asymmetrical relations of power. Even with best intentions at heart, instructors may potentially create an imbalance in the classroom, leading to negative tensions. That's according to Kubota and Lerner, 2004. Classifying genre in research can create a classification table, however, it may not account for individual differences. These strict categories in research may influence the instructor's perceptions and shift their perceptions from assessing individual needs to teaching according to genre categories, which may result in disconnect in the classroom. Thank you so much, Sue, and we'll talk about opposing views here. Starting with Kaplan 1996, as cited in Connor 2004, the intercultural rhetoric research was based on intercultural comparison among ASL students. Essentially, the linguistic comparison was done between English as an international language and other languages and cultures. As a result, an international research community has become Anglocentric. What follows is that international scholars have become hugely dependent on English use. And I'd like to introduce a personal example. So if you look at the left, you can see Kaplan's written discourse classification. So the visual representation of Russian is actually is presented as a zigzag. However, while I was writing in academic Russian, we were taught a more linear structure. So a zigzag pattern might be more related to Russian prose rather than academic Russian. So I'm wondering which genre of Russian Kaplan is referring to. As we can see, that classification of genre-specific style is complex and has to be attempted with great care. Dueñas 2012 demonstrates the hurdle Spanish scholars experience when they try to submit their work for publications. In some cases, they completely give up their research in a particular area if they felt English journals would not accept it. Because of the powerful state of the English as an international language, Spanish speaker researchers also had to invest more financial resources into the editorial and translation process. With time, they were able to develop an accepted discipline-specific writing style. However, it is worrisome that some research would not even be attempted if the international Anglo-centric community is not interested in this particular body of research. Critical intercultural rhetoric encourages us to turn a critical eye to the comparative analysis of L1 and L2 in the classroom and analyze the perspective view of the dominating language and how it can create cultural biases. That's according to Kubota and Lerner, 2004. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you so much, Kate. Okay, so this slide highlights some of our past experiences and future applications of intercultural rhetoric. In the past, Kate has used comparative syntactic analysis in the classroom to establish the source of errors in order to help students internalize English syntax. She has also conducted intercultural analysis of the use of body language and gestures of Korean versus Canadian to help a Korean doctor establish her practice here in Canada. In the past, I have always used intercultural comparisons of different cultural aspects to help my students identify similarities and differences, to provide greater cultural awareness and break down stereotypes, to eliminate biases in the classroom and create a safe learning space for students. We noted a distinct lack of research in intercultural rhetoric, specifically in the area of spoken discourse. Therefore, I would like to explore corpora, such as alpha and voice, in order to illustrate the differences between various types of Englishes and bring awareness to these in today's globalized world while legitimizing student language. Kate would like to incorporate intercultural rhetoric into her lessons by exploring various resources, such as the Michigan corpus of upper-level student papers, for the purpose of comparing the writing conventions of different countries. Okay. In conclusion, intercultural rhetoric approaches need to be used in a critical way. Instructors must consider many aspects of implementation, such as gaining an understanding of background cultural knowledge to address cultural differences of students within their classrooms and across disciplines, considering the various writing systems as well. They must also take into account the complexity of the concept of culture as dynamic, while also consulting their students' individual experiences in order to avoid bias in the classroom. This requires teaching students about their potential biases that they may have as well. We believe that critical intercultural rhetoric should be a part of teacher training courses, as it would be advantageous to all stakeholders involved. Future instructors would benefit from learning about various writing systems, which will help students succeed in an intercultural context. And last but not least, when preparing for this presentation, we discovered there is a lack of research into intercultural rhetoric approaches in spoken discourse, and believe that future studies should focus on this, as it is crucial to students functioning in an international academic setting. For example, when students study at university or college abroad, they require communication skills which may be different from what they are used to, but are essential for speaking with academic advisors, mentors, and professors. So here is the list of references that we refer to. And we thank you very much for joining us here, and we thank you for your time, and we welcome any questions that you may have.